One thing that sucks about being autistic is just how rude we all are. I mean, it's very rare that we actually mean to be rude, of course, but we're constantly accused of rudeness and usually no explanation is given. The typical act of autistic rudeness goes like this. We are asked a question or a demand is made of us. We respond in an honest way, sometimes with a blunt voice or with words that say exactly what we mean. This is particularly awkward if you're British, where saying what you mean just isn't something we do here. But yes, I'm sure that's my communication disorder. Or sometimes we just honestly misunderstand the question. We are then accused of being rude. We then ask what was so rude about what we said, which is typically an honest question asked with that same bluntness. We are then told that the fact that we're even asking is also an act of rudeness, confusing us even more. We are often punished for our rudeness and no explanation is given, so we don't learn what we actually did, nor are we offered any advice on how in future we can meet all these other people's mystery standards of acceptability. You may have gathered by now, I don't think autistic people are actually rude. Well, most of us aren't. I think the biggest issue is Dr. Damien Milton's double empathy problem. His theory being that autistic people may struggle to understand non-autistic people, but non-autistic people also struggle to understand autistic people. And it's seen as an autism-related problem simply because we're outnumbered. Anyway, as I usually do with these truly awful animations, I'm going to illustrate my point with a story. When I was a teacher in a school for autistic students, there was this 16-year-old lad in his final year of school. Yes, in Britain we leave school at 16, although you must be in some kind of further education, work or training until you're 18. I'm going to pretend his name was Jeremy. He was an interesting lad to work with, and had that autistic directness and bluntness I mentioned. For example, one day I overheard him helping a fellow student with her maths, and as good as his intentions were, it wasn't working. When she said, you're making my brain hurt," his response was, "Yeah, I'm making you use it." Needless to say, Jeremy often fell victim to the perceived rudeness trap. One day he had done something to annoy one of the other teachers. I don't remember what specifically he did, but I remember the conversation that followed. I'm pretty sure it was something to do with laziness, and the teacher spent several minutes berating him about it. And I'm not going to pretend he didn't deserve it. Just like me at 16, his attitude was basically, of course I don't need to work hard, I understood it first time. The difference between us though is that I actually did understand it first time. Anyway, it was the end of a maths lesson and the beginning of break time. I left my classroom, walked into my colleague's room to get something, and watched on as she finished speaking to Jeremy, in a voice which suggested this had been coming for a while, and sounding quite frustrated with him. And at the end of it all, she simply stopped talking. Instead of saying, "We're done," or "Right, go outside," or even "Get out of my sight," or something clear and unambiguous, she just stopped talking and started organising the papers on her desk. It was interesting, being an autistic onlooker who's been in similar situations before. I knew that this lad was confused, just stood there and wondering whether he was supposed to leave the classroom or not, and I totally understand why he said what he said next. I'll start off by describing what I assume was happening inside Jeremy's head, or at least what would have happened in my head at his age. Okay, she stopped talking, but she hasn't specified a concluding sentence. This talk might still be going on. If I leave without her granting me permission, she'll think I'm being rude. If I stay here when she actually wants to be gone, she'll think I'm just stupid. So I need to know what she wants me to do. But I can't just ask, "Can I go now?" That's the kind of thing I've been getting told off for years. How else can I phrase it? Adults like formal, sensible, mature language. I'll ask if she wants me to go, but I'll phrase the question in a nice grown-up way. I'm now going to show you what it actually looks like. You need to start taking this seriously and actually start doing some work, honestly. Will that be all? Yeah, it was awkward. Understandably, his teacher thought he was taking the mick. This lad clearly didn't realise that when teenagers use formal language like that around adults, it can be construed as mocking. A big surprise he was getting told off again for how rude he was being, ironically after he'd gone out of his way to be as polite as possible. Obviously, there's a wider point here about autism and rudeness. Because the thing is, there are so many communication methods that are common to the wider population that just seem odd to the autistic population. And of course, it works the other way around too. Yes, that would be the double empathy problem. Thanks, Dr. Damien. And when there's a mismatch in communication styles, people will often assume rudeness because that's what rudeness looks like to people who think like them. For example, if I avoid eye contact with you, some people might consider that rude. But to me, it means I'm focusing on what you're saying, which to me is a lot more polite than performatively staring at your face, pretending to be interested in what you're saying. There are a bunch of other examples too, and my theory is that if the majority of the world were autistic, a big bunch of the things we define as rude would be completely fine, and neurotypical adults would receive the same condemnation as autistic teenagers like Jeremy do. To summarise, it helps to remember a joke I heard some years ago. Don't take it too literally, but the joke is this. If some people tell you you're ugly, it's because they're nasty. If other people tell you you're ugly, it's because they're jealous. If an autistic child tells you you're ugly, you're ugly. So on that note, that's it for this video. And I'm supposed to say like, subscribe, etc, but honestly just do what you want. I'm not going to give you instructions on how to behave on YouTube because in my opinion, I think that's rude. Bye bye.